Tuesday edition. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent. Great to have you in. Beautiful Tuesday. We're going to have some fun this morning. Former Gamecocks set to join us all over the place, getting the locker room vibe going for sure this morning. But unlike this music, which does just automatically put you kind of in a good mood, got a question to ask you today to get the conversation going. And this comes from a personal experience. What was the person who invented the refrigerator with the freezer on the bottom thinking? Clearly, they didn't have a 2-year-old. If you could eradicate one invention out there, what would it be? Mine would be the refrigerator with the freezer on the bottom, because my 2-year-old just tries to steal popsicles out of there nonstop, and if he doesn't get one, he goes absolutely nuts these days. Good morning, Anthony. Good morning, Craig. Thanks for jumping in. Looking forward to talking to you guys today. A lot of stuff going on nationally from an NFL perspective. Tom Brady going to do TV after he retires, he announces today. Brett Favre is getting sued by the state of Mississippi. Christmas Day matchup between the Rams and the Broncos announced this morning, amongst the topics that we can get into. But we're going to start like we always do with the state of South Carolina, get into a Gamecock baseball discussion with some well-qualified opinions out there and guests that I see. One is already ready to go. He's got the coffee in hand. Let's go ahead and get it going this morning. We also have a Gamecock football discussion on tap a little later on with Langston Moore. But Drew Meyer, first one in this morning on the guest list. Drew famously played for the Gamecocks and helped them get to the 2002 College World Series, went on to be a first-round Major League Baseball draft pick, made it to the major leagues. What kind of bats you got behind you? Let's start with that. That's a heck of a backdrop you got, man.
The yellow one is the Easton Connection. That was the bat that I ended up using in the College World Series in 2002. And then the other one is just one of my old wooden ones that didn't get dinged up yet. I guess my career finished before the bats were used, so I had a few left over. So the wife got in the office and helped kind of hang some stuff up.
Looks good there, man. Well, why don't we start with where you're at currently, with where the Gamecocks are currently. I can pop the numbers up here on the video live stream as we get this thing going and try to look professional. 24-22 overall is where Carolina sits after coming off of winning 1 out of 3 over the weekend to Texas A&M. 10-14 in SEC play with 6 SEC games left. 3 at home this weekend against Kentucky. 3 on the road to finish against Florida.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a tough spot. You know, it's not, season's not completed yet. There's still a lot of baseball to be played, but it is running short. Obviously got Kentucky in town today or this weekend. That's a series they got to circle at least 2 out of 3 and hope for 3 out of 3. I mean, you need every game at this point of the season. Any loss is just not going to help the situation. And then I don't know, maybe you can get down to Florida, catch them on the last weekend of the year, and try to take 2 or 3 from them and kind of get on a roll. And that's kind of where I see this club is just, they're close, but they just haven't been able to that final piece. And a lot of it's the bullpen of securing the win. If you watch that game Saturday, that was a heartbreaker. You got a big lead. You're going, let's win one on the road. We got Will Sanders throwing tomorrow. This is lining up perfectly. And then it did not end how you wanted. So, kudos to those players, though, to bounce back on Sunday. Quite honestly, I said these players may be done after that one. That's a tough loss. There's no way around it. Everybody knows what's on the horizon. And they did. They bounced back, played hard, hit some home runs, and got a team win, and they're still fighting. So, if there's anything positive out of this weekend, I think that's something you can take from it.
Well, you had 9-0 on Saturday, and Texas A&M comes back and wins 13-12. Texas A&M, a good team this year, 13th in the country going in on the weekend, and really a lot of positive momentum. But as you were talking, Drew, it dawned on me this past weekend might sum up what has been the last few years, wouldn't you say? It would be close, but not quite getting on that roll. The role that they got on Mark Kingston's first year, I guess, to get 1 game away from the College World Series, kind of the highlight of the Kingston era so far. Is it a fair way to kind of sum up what you've seen from Gamecock baseball the last few years? A close, but just not quite what it has been.
Yeah, and a lot of those just come down to the end of the game in the bullpen and what you have to shut guys down. I mean, they just recently announced Matt Price getting inducted into the USC Hall of Fame. There's a reason. When he came in the game, it was lights out. And a team and an offense and a defense and a coaching staff, everybody in the stadium knows if we can just get to Matt Price with the lead or a guy like that can close this door, you just play so confident. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and Scott Barber came up and how valuable the tool he was for our team because he'd come in and close Kip out if he needed to. He usually goes 7, 8, or 9, but then he could close out on Saturday or be available to go Sunday. And that's where a lot of these winning teams, they've got a bullpen that they can hold on tight. And I think that's where we're struggling. Obviously, they've had some injuries and whatnot, but the fact still remains when you look at the pitching stats and how many guys have real innings in the SEC, it's very minimal. I mean, it's a large portion of a few guys. And, that's not the way that when they're catch chance.
Fans, a lot of them find themselves at the school deal. You also is known it needs to be better. So we're kind of set back on that being a 4-player.
Yeah, I mean, look, the only thing you can do is wait. Coach a little 9U team, and we're in a group, and we're losing a lot of games, but we're getting better. And no one's going to feel sorry for you when you're losing. That's you got to figure out how to fight, scratch, claw. You've got 6 SEC games. You get in the SEC tournament. You make a run. I mean, if you've put in all this time and effort in the fall workouts and early mornings and all the sacrifices, there's no stopping. There's nothing to stop for. I mean, this is your last outs. This is your Andrew Eister. This is coming down to the wire, and you find out what you're made of. He's had a hell of a career. Well, continue the fight. Finish the race. And if you end up you didn't get across the finish line like you wanted, that's okay. But the only thing you can do is leave it out on the field, and I think that's how they've got to look at it. But there's certainly a look at once the season ends and you go, we've got to be better. We shouldn't be sitting here in mid-May going, hey, are we going to make the SEC tournament or not? Like, we kind of got to play well to finish to get in the SEC tournament. I think Gamecock fans can all agree that's not what we're used to, and we want our team to win. We're loyal fans, and I'm much as a former player, but I've got a 9-year-old son, and we watch a lot of the games, and we're fans, and I'm always going to root for my team and always going to pull for the best and hope for the best, because anything can happen. Sports is a crazy game, and you get hot at the right time. I think they got some of the recipes. I think a lot of their offensive lineup was young or new to the program, and it took a while for them to gel. I feel like in the last probably few weeks, they're putting up more and more runs, and the pitching staff has just got to tamper down the other offense a little bit more, and they can make a run. I mean, Will Sanders is pitching great. Noah Hall's pitching great. Those two guys on any given weekend can beat anybody. So that's how you have to look at it if you're thinking that there's a chance for a run.
Yeah, and again, the past weekend, a great example of all of that, right? You jump out to a 2-1 lead on Friday night. You turn the first triple play, I think, in 14 years or something crazy like that. Looks like you're in good position, and then the A&M Bats go nuts. They score 16 runs. You get blown out and embarrassed a little bit. You bounce back the next day. You got a 9-0 lead in great position, like you mentioned, and then that goes away. Dramatic comeback win for A&M, and yet still you could lay down and get swept and be done, tuck the tail and the whole thing. Then you hit 5 home runs the next day.
Yeah.
It's why I'm careful to kind of whitewash opinions, right? And say good or not good, black and white, and the whole thing. I think it has been an exercise in that in a lot of ways in a lot of different sports for Gamecock fans in the last few years. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I mean, it's tough for these kids. I don't. without being in those locker rooms and going through tough losses, it's not easy for these kids. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I would argue they have more social pressure than we ever had when I grew up. We didn't get on the bus and have to see Twitter and see all the highlight videos and the comments of people that aren't happy with the results. I mean, that's part of life. There's also some positives out of it, but we didn't have to deal with that. We were kind of in our own little shelter in college of, we went to the Roost to eat, and we went to the Sarge, and that's kind of where you spent most of your time. You didn't have a lot of feedback, or at least negative feedback. Ours, when we were winning games, was positive feedback from students around campus, and just living life normal. When you're winning games, you get treated differently. So, but these days, I think they have a lot more to deal with. They've got probably their dads, and I don't even know if they have player agents these days for college guys, and transfer portal, and you can swing here this year. They got this shortstop got hurt, that left fielder's leaving. I mean, all these different distractions than just going out there and playing the game of baseball. And that's what these guys have to deal with. And it's not going to change. It is part of the new era. And I think the ones that can figure out how to adjust the fastest will continue to succeed.
Good stuff, Drew. Since you've been there, you've done it at multiple levels. Now that you've had a few years to be able to look back on your career, maybe even the Gamecock baseball eras, how was Ray Tanner able to do it so consistently for as long as he did at such a high level?
Well, I talked to some other former players that are also coaching some youth teams, and we want to be better as coaches. And one thing Coach Tanner was so good at was, yes, he coached the team as a team, but he was really good at coaching each individual player to their positive, attributes. If you had a negative, he would expose it and challenge you mentally and physically to fix it. But what he really taught is, when you get good at something, perfect it and go with it. We had a lot of big time home run hitters when I played there, and he didn't shy away from that. If that's what you do good, then go hit them. Try to. It's not going to be any good for you to try to hit singles all day. If you're a home run hitter and that's your mentality, then go for it. And then you got a guy like myself, where he's teaching me about how I can best help the team and further my career. And it was not hit home runs. I mean, those will happen, but I hit 11 my freshman year, and then only hit 7 my sophomore year and 6 my junior year. But by my junior year, my average had gone up 40 points, and we scored a lot of runs on that team, and me being the leadoff spot. So he was just really good at teaching each player individually and coaching them up. Sometimes you got to slap them on the butt. Sometimes you got to give them a hug. I mean, it may depend on the day. And I thought Coach Tanner just did a really good job of knowing his players, and he earned our respect. So when he came to you with something, you listened with open ears and open mind, because he definitely knew what he was talking about. We saw the success he had before us at NC State, and we could see the kind of tide changing here at South Carolina. And now, after the last, call it, 2002 to 2012, when I coached with him in his last season, you just saw him continue to adapt to the game that's today. And it may be a little bit different than he would want it. He's an old school coach and did things a different way, or wanted to, but he also learned that you have to keep up with these kids, because ultimately this game is for the kids. It's not for the coaches. The coaches is just the people putting it together and helping out. But it's the game is the kids, and we need to let them play it like they want.
How much of that success was also having guys kind of stacked up at positions, having a bunch of talented players ready to step in if you weren't performing as a starter?
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, first of all, it drives the competition in practice every day. I've said this my whole life, but I love practice. I'd go out there to do it today. I've got practice for our teams Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, and I told them, y'all don't even have to come to all of them, but I like practice, so I'll be there. So anybody that wants to hit, let's go. I think it's where you get better. The game is more of a test, or even a reward for your hard work, just to see where you're at and find out what you need to go work on next week in practice. But when you've got guys stacked up at each position, and not only just numbers, it doesn't mean we have 2 or 3 shortstops. It's you got a Brian Jeffcoat right behind you, working hard and waiting for you to slip up, because as soon as he gets this opportunity, he's going to step in. And that applies all the way to first base, catcher, second, third. I mean, there was always we always had some big hitters in there, and there's no doubt that Coach Tanner liked the big hitters. And so if he thought your bat was a little more valuable than your lack of defense, he'd throw you in there and go for it. We got outscored some teams, and we'll manage the rest with some simple defense. But I thought the competition is really what drove us, because it made us bond together as a team too. We had a lot of fun at practice, and we truly pulled for each other. And it made it easy going to practice every day, especially when you go to the games and pays off, and you get rewarded with some wins, and the team has fun. There's just no better feeling in sports.
That fun part is an interesting dichotomy for me watching teams from a Gamecock baseball perspective. I feel like winning breeds its own fun, right? If you can't have fun winning, especially in baseball, then I don't understand what's going on. But I think the flip side of that is there as well. I think it's really difficult to stay loose and stay having a lot of fun if you're not getting results, especially because baseball is such an individual game, right? You go up to the plate, it's just you up there. You don't perform, then you can't feel great about it just naturally. So how do you feel like a team that's not winning like it knows it needs to, like a program is not winning like it knows it needs to? How can you then balance that out with the inherent failures that is baseball?
Yeah, it's tough, and I don't I don't say this to be sound egotistical, but I'm not exactly sure for these college athletes how to go through that. We didn't lose very many games. I think we won 50 games all 3 years I was there. Um, and so I don't know what the vibe is. I mean, when we showed up back then, we showed up every day truly expecting to win. I mean, there was we may know we're facing a good pitcher, stuff like that. And I'm not saying they do or don't. I'm not in the heads of these kids. Only the ones very in that locker room would know. But it's got to be challenging when you look out there and know that you feel like you're short staffed, and how are we going to put this together? And some early season losses to some teams they probably shouldn't have, that doesn't help build the confidence of, okay, if all we got to do is show up and play hard and we win. No, they need to show up, play hard, and play good. They just don't maybe have the exact talent with these injuries and different positions of guys transferring in. There's a little bit less of a gelling situation. But you do kind of got to treat it a little bit. And baseball is a selfish game. It's a one-on-one battle. I think where you can take that into the game, but the difference is the locker room, the dugout. You still got to be a team player. I mean, if you don't pull for your teammates, karma's going to come your way. The baseball gods will catch up with you. It rewards those that play the game for the right reasons and the right way. And so I think that's how they got to look at it. And this is, if anything, you're trying out for next year, whether it's in the South Carolina uniform or professional career or transferring or whatever the situation is. Every at bat counts, and it's your career. And how do you want to be? How do you want to be remembered by people? A guy that cashed it in and gave up and didn't quite give his heart his last 2 or 3 weeks, or no, he went and balled out. He's diving through fences to make catches because that's what kind of player he is.
As you were speaking there, I'm wondering now where you think the game of baseball is overall. Certainly has evolved in the last couple of decades since you did it in a Gamecock uniform, not necessarily just the college game, but the major league game. Maybe a few more bat flips, just a different type approach in a lot of ways. You got a pitch clock now as well. Where do you think baseball is? And you mentioned coaching your son as you're kind of grooming the next generation. How do you kind of marry, I guess, the way that you played the game or the way the game was when you were growing up and where it is now?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly the home runs have become more talked about, and a bigger part of the game, and strikeouts, less as an embarrassment. And when we grew up, when you struck out, you were embarrassed, and people used to make fun of you. I'd run off the field. And I got into professional baseball, and I was playing in Savannah in first game or whatever, my first strikeout, I ran off the field. And I ended up getting fined in kangaroo court. They're like, "Nah, man, you walk back. Like that's rookie league stuff." I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm embarrassed. I figured if I struck out and got off the field, maybe nobody would look up and know who just struck out." That was just a mentality that is clearly not there today, because these guys, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong. It's just a different approach. They care more about driving the ball. But at coaching the youth level, I still teach my son hard ground balls and line drives. I mean, the home runs will happen. Guys that hit plenty of home runs in their life know that for the most part, they weren't trying to hit home runs. They were trying to hit balls hard, and they got a little bit of elevation. Now, there are some that can just outmuscle the ball, and just swing up and hit it. Well, those are the very, very talented. And you don't necessarily know that until it fully develops. So I think for these kids, and I would say all the way through college, is try to hit balls hard, line drive up the middle, gap to gap, and you'll get good results. But I've been calling a lot of games this year, so there's some of the things that just make me mad. The umpire reviews. I mean, the umpires are scared to make any call in the game right now. They're just like picking one, and they're like, let's review it right away. It's they do all these other things like a pitch clock and other rules that you can't step off without faking to a base. They're all this to save to design time. And then the one thing that's taken up 5 to 10 minutes a game is replay that they have control over. And it's the reason why we're taking long. I mean, if they care that much, they should have. I don't even know how it works. I say all this because I'm in the booth, but I don't know who's making the calls. I guess it's coming from Birmingham, but I think the delays in baseball are they got to clean those up for unnecessary reasons. I mean, sometimes you get a close call, bang bang, it takes a little bit, but some of these it seems like they should be acting quicker. But and then guys getting paid in college and NIL money. It's part of the deal. If it was happening when I was playing, would I maybe try to take advantage of the opportunity? For sure. I'm not stupid, but I also am here to say I don't think it's good for baseball and college sports. And I got to play both as far as college professionally. And I'll just tell you, it changes when money gets involved. When we were in college, we played to win. Maybe you'll have an opportunity when all this is said and done, but you had a group of guys that had one goal and one goal only, and that was to win a national championship. And so with some of this money, maybe not in baseball, but these other sports of how much money they're throwing around, I don't know. Now the quarterback's got to start treating his offensive lineman to dinner, just like they do in the NFL. Is there for a reason. If you're getting paid and I got to protect you, you better help me out. And I just think sometimes that can just lead to problems in a locker room.
Interesting stuff there. Drew Meyer, you've been in a lot of winning locker rooms, like you mentioned, especially in college. How did it change exactly? Was it an abrupt change? The line that sticks out to me that I've never heard kind of crystallized as clear as he put it was when Whit Merrifield, after several years battling through the minor league system with the Kansas City Royals, finally got called up, and he said, I'm just happy that now the goal is going to be to win the game every day. And just that stark reality of basically saying, I can read between the lines there, it was all about developing, or it wasn't all about winning. And to have grown up on teams where it was all about winning and the team and the whole thing, to hear that from a professional athlete was pretty jarring at the time. He said it several years ago. Was that the feeling that you had with the main difference between the Gamecock locker room that you left going to the Texas Ranger system, I believe, first, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a mind-blowing difference. I mean, if you really think about it, I went from the College World Series playing the national championship game in front of however many people at Rosenblatt, 25,000, and about 4 days later, pulling up into Grayson Stadium in Savannah, Georgia, playing in front of about 200 fans, with half that didn't speak English as their home language, and not. If you really think about it, your biggest competition is in your locker room. It's not even the other team. It's the actual ones you're on the team with. That's who you're trying to beat out to move up to next level to eventually get to the big league. So, it was a big difference. There was not a focus on winning. I mean, I think that Savannah team in 140 games, I've missed most of them, thankfully, but I think they lost 110 out of 140. I mean, guys were getting released every single day. I was like, what is going on here? They're calling up guys that just signed. They're releasing this. I mean, it was a tough deal. And I was the bonus baby. Not a lot of guys get to skip that college rookie league. They have that, the New York Penn League and some other things for guys that sign out of college to go do a short summer ball. I skipped all that, went straight to low way, joining a bunch of guys that have gotten their butts kicked all year and seen all their friends released or whoever else. But they've kind of set up shop in Savannah, and this was their team. And here comes this bonus baby as the shortstop. And so naturally, there's some jealousy there because there's no secret on where the signing bonuses were. So it really went from a team sport at South Carolina, the ultimate team sport for me, to I got to figure out how to try to play this game for myself. And I wasn't very good at that. It's not why I played the game, and I say ultimately that was probably one of my biggest hangups is I couldn't figure that part of the game out that these other guys like a Whit Merrifield was. He grinded it out enough to get to the big leagues and obviously perform to where now he gets to do that same thing as far as playing for the team and team only at the highest level. And so that's why you have to have so much respect for those guys that do it the hard way because it's not easy.
Yeah, saw Will Crow last night faced 4 Dodgers for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Got all 4 out of the bullpen for them in the 7th and 8th innings as well. Another former Gamecock doing well in the big leagues right now. Drew, as you were talking about that, really interesting, the dichotomy, I guess, between college baseball and minor league baseball. Is that one of the reasons you're a huge proponent of guys who have that decision to make out of high school, who are that talented like you were, to go the college baseball route as opposed to go straight to professional ball?
Yeah, and I say that kind of as a blanket statement, but I would also say that each situation is different. I've been in contact with some guys on Twitter, that some old time baseball Kansas City Royals, that reached out to me and said, "No, you're wrong." Brian McRae, he said, "If I would have gone to college, trust me, I would have failed, wasted a scholarship, wasted coach's time. It was not for me." Well, he had seen my post about going back to college, and that's what he was doing. He was, after playing all that time, he grew up and matured, and so he's right. It isn't for everybody,
Well,
but
and Brian's dad played in Major
Al
League
McRae,
Baseball, right?
absolutely,
So
yeah, yep,
it's a
and that's
slightly different environment. I'd say he's the exception there, right?
yeah, you're right. But we were having a good, healthy discussion, and he was looking at it. He was very highly considering it, but now he's back in college, and I think because he wants to coach college baseball. So I'm like, it comes full circle. But yeah, I know the experiences that I had at South Carolina, and the maturity that I was at 17 years old, and knowing that these guys at 17, yeah, they're probably exposed to more than I was at that point. But at the end of the day, you're going to be sent to like a Billings, Montana, or wherever, and you're on your own. And the coaches will care for you and stuff like that. But when we said that your teammates are your competition, when you're 17, they're a lot less mature about it. When you're 24 in AAA, everybody kind of knows the deal. But at that young age, where no, man, this is the strongest survive. There's some animosity, and it sometimes doesn't go as well. Now, with all that being said, there's a lot of friendships that are developed during these teams too. But there's definitely cliques of, you'll have some pitchers when they're charting the stands, they're writing down velocities for these pitchers. Sometimes a certain guy is 94 for one guy and he's 91 for another guy. They just write down different numbers to get turned into organization. Now that's probably changed with all the electronic equipment they just set up. But back then, catchers giving hitters signals, telling the hitter, fastball's coming, just to not let that, try to hurt the pitcher. I mean, I'm like, golly, you guys are ruthless. We find out you're doing that to me, I'm gonna have a problem. So it's the minor league game's a different game. And I just think a lot of the guys I played with in the Rangers system, we'd sit around the locker room and talk, and they'd all kind of, not all of them, but most of them would say, "I wish I'd have gone to college," because we're the same age. You were a 99 draft. I signed in 99. You waited to 2002. You got drafted. Now we're supposed to sitting here in Savannah losing the same amount of games. Mm-hmm. So what difference does it make, except for I had to go through Pulaski, Virginia, and all these extended spring trainings, and you've been playing in South Carolina, getting your degree, and playing in the College World Series. Like that sounds a lot better than what I've been doing, because this has kind of sucked for the last 2.5 years. So it's tough in those early minor leagues. Most people only see the high ends. I mean, in AA, AAA, very spoiled here in South Carolina with the Columbia Fireflies and the Greenville Drive and the Charleston River Dogs. I mean, those are 3 awesome minor league stadiums. So they're like, "Oh, this is great." Well, go to some other places,
right?
Myrtle Beach Pelicans, and so you go to some other places, and it's not that cozy and fun, quite honestly. So, I just think you grow up a lot in college, and you learn a lot about becoming a man, and also learn about being a teammate. Because usually if you're a guy that's drafted that high out of high school, you've had a lot of attention your last couple of years from scouts, etc. And then now you're just getting thrown to the wolves of, nope, you're a dime a dozen. You're a hard throwing righty that throws 92 with a little bit of sink in a slider. Join the list. Now we're trying to figure out who can compete and do this for the next 10 years. So it's a tough decision for kids, but I would say I would push to college, especially if you feel like you've got a good college situation that you feel comfortable in.
How can Major League Baseball set up minor league baseball better? They've obviously changed it a lot here in the last few years with less organizations, I think, less affiliates out there. There's been talk about raising kind of the salary, and I think maybe it's been more exposed how little a lot of minor leaguers make. Is there anything that can be done out there that you would like to see done to improve the minor league baseball experience, let's say?
I would this is tough because it's a business, but if we're just going to talk out loud, I would think about somehow limiting the number of transactions minor league teams can have, with the end goal of being, no, you've got a core group of players that stays there all season. The fans like it because now they get to actually follow their players for a whole season and get to know these players. The players, they learn how to play as a team and win. And then, with the injuries and maybe certain special circumstances, that's why I say limited. You might have to move a guy up to go to AA or released. I mean, that's part of it too. But I'd rather see, and that way you could set up better housing for these kids instead of guys getting sent in, out, up, down, and they never have any lodging for them. They have to put them in hotels for 3 days at a time. You can set up a better living situation, maybe pay them a little more. I mean, Major League Baseball, there's some guys in Major Leagues making a lot of money. They don't need to leave like one or two of those zeros to satisfy this whole minor league financial problem. And then I would throw a bonus for these players for playoff appearances and championships, because that will drive them. I mean, when I was in AAA and guys were getting paid, call it $12,000 a month, and you only get paid when you play, and we're coming down in the playoffs, you had two groups of guys in the dugout. One that not wanted us to lose, but they wanted us to lose because the major leagues were waiting for them to get called up for the September call up until our season was over. So they are like actively wanting us to lose. And the second half is all the guys that's not getting called up. And as soon as this last game is over, they're not getting paid anymore. So they want to win like hell, because you win, you get paid. You keep going deeper into playoffs. So, I mean, what an interesting dynamic of and you think you'd want one on your team and the other one not, but no, the guys that don't get called up are the ones that want to win. The guys that want it that way. So, I would try to do something with that. I think for the fans, it would be a lot cooler if you could go to your games and constantly see the same guys out there over and over and see them actually truly develop over a year for the true fans. And then it'd help kind of add some financial structure and some compensation for these guys just to make it a little more interesting.
Yeah, that reminds me of talking to G.A. Mangus, former Steve Spurrier assistant on the football team at South Carolina, who has recently been in the XFL, talking about how the financial structure was set up so well like that, because if you win, you're getting more money. And everybody's happy and celebrating at the end and the whole thing. But that was a new league that was able to set it up that way. And then, unfortunately, COVID hit and kind of put a big wrinkle in that deal. Drew, going back through your playing career, getting to the College World Series, minor leagues to the major leagues, and now kind of coming full circle being a coach and coaching your son. What is the biggest lesson out there, I guess, maybe that you could impart to other coaches out there who maybe didn't have your experiences, but can point the next generation in the right way?
I would say practice. We're part of the USSA travel ball, which I would call it more tournament ball than travel ball. But the idea is you're playing 3-4 games, and on certain weekends you sign up. Our team specifically, we started late February, we'll end mid-June, and we'll play in 6 tournaments. We felt like that was about the right ratio. But there's a lot of teams out there that just play. They just sign up for the weekends. And quite honestly, I think that's lazy as a coach. The hardest work you can do, the best work you can do is in practice, where you're truly teaching the kids. And then the game, I think you should just let the kids play during the game and try to let them learn it as much as possible. But you see some of these teams and they're playing so many games in a single specific year at a young age. And I know that's kind of what has to, they feel it has to be done to keep up, because there's others doing it, but it doesn't make it right. And when you see that, there's guys that Major League Baseball players, they probably go 2 to 3 months without even touching a baseball, and there's 9-year-olds that don't go more than a month without touching baseball. I just fear for, I'm around the program a little bit here and there. So I've talked to different college coaches. I experienced it about 10 years ago when I was coaching. But the more that these travel teams and showcase teams have become dominant, and really the only way to, or one of the only ways to get exposed, they don't know how to play as a team. I mean, when these kids show up to college campus, they haven't gone through a 2.5-hour college style baseball workout for 5 days a week. A lot of them are just, we're playing Atlanta. Some kid will fly in from Tennessee, somebody flying from South Carolina, somebody flying from Florida. Y'all just get your work in at home at your own facility, get your bullpens in, show up here ready to play. And they haven't really gone through the full practice schedules that they're going to face in college. And I think that's a big adjustment for all these college coaches is how do you reel these kids back in from their crazy, maybe summer schedules they've been playing for the last 4 years into no, this is what a college season looks like. And this is how a structure looks like. So, I would say for the coaches and even players is just get a lot of reps, take care of your arm. I mean, I'm big on throwing. I think you have to be smart. I threw all the time, so I was never really worried. But some kids that maybe they'll throw a lot for 2 weeks and then take 3 weeks off, and they think they can just pick it right back up and go out there and pitch again. It's like, you better be careful. I mean, when I say take care of your arm, I'm talking you better play catch 5-6 days a week minimum, maybe 7 if it's a light day, just to keep the cobwebs off and keep it moving. But I think practice is huge, and I think teaching them the right things and playing the game the right way. I'm all for the bat flips and stuff like that here and there, but it has gotten completely out of control as far as it's a home run, dude. I mean, you hit a walk off in a big moment, absolutely. You can Jose Bautista that thing all day. But, I mean, when it's like a Saturday afternoon and we're in the middle of Ohio, it's April. I mean, come on. So respect the game a little bit. Get excited. I want the kids to play fun and be. I was an exciting player. I like it, but you gotta respect the game a little bit more. It's getting a little bit out of hand, and maybe it hasn't. Maybe it was the same thing we did back in the day, except for now everybody's got a video camera out and we get to see it all. I think there's probably a little bit of both of that going on.
I hear you on that, and I think that's the difficult part for the adults that might be in charge of youth leagues or teams, and the whole way that you want them to have fun. You want them to want to win, and then you got to have the larger perspective at hand as well, because that's what these travel ball teams are built to do, right? They're getting all these players from different places because they want to win, but then we all want that to be the emphasis. So you don't want to de-emphasize winning, but you also have to emphasize development at the same time, improvement. That leads me, I guess, to my next question. Did you play multiple sports growing up? When did you start focusing on baseball?
Yeah, growing up, played football, basketball, baseball, soccer as far as youth. And then when the Stingrays came to town, we may even mentioned some street hockey in the old driveway to join the fun. But no, competitively. And then when I got to high school, I played baseball freshman year, football my freshman year, then basketball, then baseball. And then my sophomore year, I was actually going to be the starting quarterback and run the option for Bishop England, and ran 2-a-days all summer getting ready for that. And I wasn't a very big kid, but I was quick and nimble, and they thought maybe the option I could make some reads. And I would say by the blessing of God, that Friday morning is when I found out that I had a back issues going on. They found out that my last vertebrae was fractured and healed misaligned. And so they're like, well, your football career is over. Like, no chance you're playing again. I'm like, well, darn, that was a good waste of 2-a-days all summer. Not to mention, well, if that's the case, what's baseball look like? And they said, no, baseball's fine. The left, right swing. It's just a lot of offensive linemen get what I had, and ballerinas when they arch their backs and pushing up. They don't know if it was an injury that happened when I was younger and then it slowly developed, but it's still something I deal with today. But that shut down my football career. And that was my sophomore year. And I ended up playing basketball my sophomore year, and then after that it was just full on baseball my junior and senior year.
So by doing the math there, it sounds like not until your junior year of high school did you specialize in baseball. And is that something that you kind of share with other families, or is that more individualized as well when specific athletes are going to make one sport their sport?
Yeah, it's really tough to say because it's I personally play as many sports as possible. I think that's I don't know few people know what they're going to be great at, and parents know less sometimes just because they think one way. So I think the more you can get out there developmentally, I think there's so many reasons for your muscles and your strength and conditioning. I also think learn from different coaches and playing around a different group of players and different mentalities is good. And I just think it teaches overall to try to win at everything. Everything you do, just try to win at, and it makes it more fun. And if you just playing baseball, I think there's a lot of stress and pressure that can come to a kid that if that's where all the marbles are. It can kind of more seem like a chore and a job and an expectation rather than we're just doing this fun. But there's a book out there called Range, and I think the two athletes they gave were Roger Federer and Tiger Woods. And they're like, obviously Tiger grew up with a golf club in his hand, and maybe Federer. I may have the tennis player wrong. I think it was Federer didn't pick up a tennis racket until he was 13. Well, what's the difference? They're both the best in the world. So there's many different paths to get there, and I think I would lean on the side playing more sports, especially at the young age. Now, I think you start getting to your years, and if you want a true keep up, and try to play in college, it may be time to have to maybe lean more towards one way or another. But I still think there's ways to do other sports. I mean, down here, I told my son that's got certain funny. He's like, "What about baseball? We're going to do fall baseball. It won't be, this will be more just practicing. And we're going to do soccer." It's like, "We're not soccer. We're going to do transfer here. That's why they're getting school. So they're going to do the thing. And that was wheels good. That is soccer. But then they're great. So I'll team when start hard. Listen, tell you it looks good. We're doing a party that you go, man, I am just tired of this. I've missed out on all this. The truth is, you haven't missed out on anything. Nobody's been doing anything yet. But this is where the socialization, all that starts to happen to these kids, and you hear it all the time. Those people. I talked to him now. His dad's on my baseball team. God, I quit when I was 13, man. I just wanted to hang out with my boys and party. And I said, okay, you're right. And that hasn't changed in the history of time. And I think the more that you play so many sports early on and put this focus that it's got to go somewhere or it was all for nothing, the higher the chances they're going to say, well, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere, so I'm going to cut my losses now. When in reality, sports are meant to be fun. I think about like high school sports, and we got these large high schools like a Wando High School. I've got West Ashley High School, half a mile from where I sit right now. And I just wish there was more 1A and 2A schools or 3A schools. There's just smaller schools because, if you're trying out for the baseball team or the basketball team and you're going up against 1,000 other boys in that school just to play high school sports and you don't make it, you're going to find something else to do. And I think if you had smaller high schools, it would just have more people involved in sports. You'd have more parents involved in their kids' sports. You'd have more cheerleaders. I just think it would it help out with a lot of the problems that we're having, just because these kids these days, I mean, forget trying to play college baseball or basketball. I mean, go to Dorman High School and see how easy it is to make one of their teams.
Right. Where I think that's where parents kind of logically get so serious about their kids at such a young age, especially those like me that didn't have near the success that you did in the playing career and might be trying to overcompensate or make sure that their kids are going to be set up for as much success as possible. Is there any good resource out there, do you feel like, that parents who didn't have the professional experience that you had, even the college experience that you had, can rely on as far as like a second opinion, or just someone out there that can give some good kind of unbiased advice, because you want to hear the truth as a parent and where your kid's at and the whole thing, and yet you want to have somebody you can trust to kind of help them along the right path, if there is a right path, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a big thing is talk to the coaches of your kids, current and former. If someone had your kid 2 years ago, talk to them about what he saw on them. And I mean, coaches should give their honest opinion. I tell my parents all the time, I am wide open to have an open discussion face to face, but I will answer your questions. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're coming to me for a reason. You're confused. And I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm not going to be a jerk about it, but the only thing I can do is give you my honest opinion, and it's up to you to use it or not. That's it's my opinion. So I would lean on coaches, and even if you have a relationship with high school coach, for instance, and say, what kind of players are you looking for? When players come in, what are you seeing the things of why they maybe don't have as much success? I mean, the people that have done it for a long time, Paul Rooney for Bishop England right now, for example. I guarantee you when he has his first varsity girls tryout, he knows right now after one practice, you know right away who the girls on his team that are going to be the players and who's not. He's been doing it for so long. It doesn't change. You know, he knows what a winner looks like. And so he could, you know, he'd be a guy, if I had a girl going to Bishop England and trying to make the team, that's who I would lean on. So, you know, maybe the coaches that you hope to have one day, you know, I think it'd be a little more of a stretch than to say you could ask a college coach those kind of questions, but your high school coaches for sure. And then maybe if there's a, you know, a parent that's maybe a few years older that looks like they're having success in a lot of things they do, of just sitting down and just hearing how they went about it. Doesn't mean you need to copy it and mimic it, but it may open up your mind on some different things they thought about when making the decisions they did as far as what sports to play and what seasons and which teams and all that kind of stuff.
Well, you did it at the major league level, obviously for the Gamecocks as well. The first College World Series that Ray Tanner went to, playing against Texas there in the national championship game. So all across the board, and now coaching your son. What do you like better if you had to choose? You like coaching your son, or you like the playing days?
Playing days was a lot easier. That's for
that?
sure. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Try to teach the patients that it's taken me 40 years to learn about this great game. And I have to try to pound it into a bunch of 9-year-old knuckleheads that as soon as that game's over, they're straight to the ice cream shop. You know, I mean, they're doing it the right way. And I want them to keep that way, but I also want them to realize that you cannot miss your over your cutoff throw again, or we're going to continue to lose these games. Quit trying to pick the guy off. He's just baiting you. So it's fun. They have a lot of fun. I push them hard in practice, but we took them to a Carolina game this past weekend. We had a tournament we did up in Lexington, so we could kind of have a little fun little weekend with the boys. And so they had a lot of fun with that. I mean, it's crazy, you know, Charleston's only 2 hours away, but these kids down here, they didn't even know a stadium like that existed right up the road. I mean, it's really, you know, we have the Joe down here, and I love the Joe, but it's a totally different, you know, scenario up there at Founders Park. And so, you know, all the players like, oh my gosh, you played here? I'm like, no, I didn't play here. Coach Toman promised me I'd play here about 25 years ago, but no, it was not ready. But it really, these kids dream, you know, they want to play the highest level. So it's been fun to kind of show them a little bit of that. And I've got a bunch of my old baseball cards. That's what I pass out for like, you know, kid has a great day hustling, or I focus on 3 things to get playing time: hustle, attitude, and focus. I'm like, you just show up and give me that every day, you'll be in the lineup, I promise you, because they work. That's why. You don't have to be the best ball player. You can do those 3 things and hang in there anywhere. And so I'll pass out baseball cards on, you know, I'm like, all right, you gotta fill your whole collection. I've got 19 cards, so if you can fill my collection this year, you're doing pretty good. I don't even know if I have that many to give out, but I'll go find them somewhere if it works.
Good stuff, man. Wondering, I guess, to get you out on today, what do you think, if anything, the Gamecocks need to do to end up getting towards the NCAA tournament? Do you feel like it's a 5 out of 6 kind of deal? You got to finish 500 in the SEC in these last 6 games. You got to win 5 of the last 6 to get there, or is it something? Am I seeing that a little different?
I don't know. It feels like if they go like a 4-6 and go deep into the SEC tournament, like 14 wins. How many wins do they have right now? 10.
Sitting at 10 and 14 in the SEC,
yeah.
24 and 22.
So that was 4-6 would get them to 14. And they made a not even a good run, a deep run in the SEC tournament. Was that enough? I don't know. If you go 5-6 and make a medium run, maybe. If you go 5-6 and you're done right away, you know, I mean, I think a lot rides on the SEC tournament, and it's going to be a tough tournament for them to quote unquote win. I mean, you've got to play a lot of games in a lot of days. Well, we just spent a lot of time here talking, and that their staff is a little short. So that doesn't seem to be your best route. Your best route is probably to try to get 4 or 5 or 6, and then win your first 3 games of whatever you do in the SEC tournament and go all for broke. You may have nothing left for any game after that, but you got the 3rd win, because I think the chances of you're going to have to put up 12 runs, 15 runs a game to do that. And that's just asking too much of a team, I think. So I would almost blitz the SEC tournament and just say, we're trying to win every game like it's our last, and we'll figure it out from there.
Interesting stuff. Drew, really appreciate your time today, man. Great catching up with you.
Yeah,
Good
man.
stuff all around, especially with the coaching the 9U team now. I think a lot of us can relate to where you are in that. I know I can. I got my 9-year-old and 7-year-old are both playing tonight at the same time. So
Oh, nice.
jump back and forth between a couple of games and try to coach as much as I can. So really appreciate that from the coaching standpoint. Know a lot of former Gamecocks appreciate the Gamecock knowledge as well.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you. Good job on your show, man. I'm glad you're back.
Much appreciated. Drew Meyer, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have him back soon if he's up for it, and getting lots of wisdom and good advice in a lot of different ways from Drew, and leaning off of his experience as well, and being all over the place. And there's the famous story about Drew is that he turned down Tommy Lasorda to come play for Ray Tanner and the Gamecocks, and being a highly coveted high school baseball player, choosing to go the college route obviously was a big thing for Ray Tanner and the Gamecock baseball program back in the day, and was a big part of that 2000 team that went 50-6 and had so much success, and really set up the program in a lot of ways, despite not being able to make it to the College World Series that year. But he did make it that 2002 season and was a big part of those teams that beat Clemson twice in the national semifinals, went on to that national championship game against Texas. And to hear him talking about where baseball is now, 20 years later after that College World Series, which is hard to believe. Interesting perspective for sure. And we'll try to lean on Drew as the Gamecocks continue down the stretch here in the SEC season and in 2022. I got a comment in from Craig saying he just doesn't know how motivated 18-year-olds who have a bunch of money given to them are going to want to work in any sport. Craig, I would say I don't think that's an 18-year-old thing necessarily. I think that's just a person thing, an individualized thing, because I mean, we see it. We were talking about Robbie Anderson yesterday with Joe Person, who covers the Carolina Panthers for The Athletic, and after he got paid, he didn't have much of a season at all last year in the NFL. He's not 18. I think you see it all the time with contract years coming up for guys who just suddenly have a resurgence, right? And then it doesn't work out that way. Hey, appreciate the kind words from Carlos and Danielle. Great show. As a youth soccer and baseball coach for my kids, I 100% agree on being truthful to parents. Absolutely. But that can be tricky, especially knowing how parents can be so invested, right, in their kids. But ultimately, you got to pull off the Band-Aid if there's any kind of bad news there and give it to them straight. And I think it works out better for everybody that way in the long run for sure. And it's just something you got to do. Interesting day, interesting morning this morning from a national perspective. Tom Brady going to join Fox after he retires from football, whenever that may be, was the news coming out this morning. Not necessarily next year or the year after that, I guess, but just mentioning that he's going to be their number one analyst, or that news popping out this morning. I don't know what I think about that. Obviously, Tom Brady sees the game better than anyone ever has, and has played it better than anyone has. But then to convey it on television, that's a completely different deal. But I don't blame Fox at all, and we'll see how this goes. You know, this has been the current trend. I feel like Tony Romo almost even cut his career a little short to go jump into the television role, and he's done it differently than anyone else, and you could argue better than anyone else, and certainly in some ways, being able to forecast plays right in front of us in live time and tell us basically what's going to happen in a lot of ways. But coming at it from his own angle, Greg Olson certainly has seemed interested in doing that, and has jumped right in. I mean, he did it some in his playing career and then jumped right in after his playing career was over. Another name that popped in my head, Jason Witten, maybe on the other end, right? Got thrust in the Monday Night Football role a little too early and didn't work out great for him. So there are examples on both ends of the spectrum, but interesting news this morning that Tom Brady is going to do that, because how diversified, I guess, might be the best way to put it, being married to a supermodel and having the TB12 health deal out there, and seemingly being maybe a little bit more worldly than a lot of football players who get that tunnel vision and are really just all about football all the time, and having it announced his retirement, and now putting this out there after coming back, and there's video of him working out in a with the Bucks or in a Bucks helmet the other day. It's quite the switch, right? It's almost like he went, "Hey, there's more to life than football. I'm going to be done, moving on." And then he got a couple of weeks in, maybe, and was like, "I've made a terrible mistake. I'm going back to football." And now he's doubling down on that, and not only going back to football to play it, but saying that he's going to do it in an analyst role as well. Interesting for sure. I got my buddy Trey Dyson in here, who's being way too high maintenance, trying to get it on the program. Trey played with Drew Meyer and the Gamecocks back in the day, so he's got the former player perspective. And Drew, by the way, we had our buddy John Combs hit me up here on the private text line and say that he actually played against Drew Meyer in basketball back in the day when he was a freshman at Carolina, the practice facility. Drew could play. He mentions, of course he could. I mean, you don't get to be a major league baseball player without having some serious physical skills, and that one not surprising to me at all. Not surprising at all. So try to get an update for you from the baseball perspective on the latest from North Greenville Division II Conference Championship over the weekend. They're the adopted team of the show, because Trey has already taken us through their clubhouse in show number 1. He took us on the road with them on Friday to give us a preview of the conference tournament. And then they turn around and win their 4th straight, I believe it is. And they're the number 1 ranked team in Division II college baseball right now. So we'll try to get an update from Trey here coming up in a couple of minutes. Also coming up in just a few minutes, Langston Moore, the former Gamecock football star, NFL veteran as well for several years all around the league, the Lions, the Bengals, probably forgetting at least 2 or 3. So Langston, not just a football guy who has been on the sidelines for the Gamecocks and did that for several years, but also a children's author. And I just happened to run into him at a literacy picnic for one of my kids the other day. He's out promoting literacy in the state of South Carolina. So obviously doing great things for our state and just for the youth of South Carolina specifically, but just has a great message to share as always. But wanted to get a couple more highlights or a couple more headlines to you. So Tom Brady and Fox out there, Brett Favre, my favorite quarterback of all time. Hate to see this. Anytime a former quarterback is in the news these days, it's typically not on the positive side, and Favre right there. A weird story out of the state of Mississippi. I guess Favre was involved in a business that ended up is now being accused of taking welfare money from the state of Mississippi. And the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase, was in there as well. As reading this story, and it was hard to follow all the details in that one, but this is just developing, and I guess no one wins in this thing is how I see it. But Brett Favre named in this thing, and it looks like, I guess, being asked to repay a bunch of money, and he says he didn't know it was welfare money, was paid for speaking engagements that allegedly didn't even happen, and the whole thing. So that's a mess that Brett Favre is involved in right now. And then the Rams Broncos set for Christmas Day. More NFL news today. You're going to get Russell Wilson and the defending Super Bowl champs and Matt Stafford and company going at it on Christmas Day. Should be a fun one as it sets up here, and a great example of how the NFL drives the sports news cycle in the offseason, as we're on May 10th talking about the Christmas Day matchup. Oh, there he is, sporting his Steve Spurrier look with the glasses over there. You're sitting overlooking the beautiful North Greenville field there?
That would be correct, sir.
Attaboy, Trey Dyson. You guys are coming off your championship run over the weekend. Thanks for joining us. Please, you kind of let me down yesterday. I was looking forward to the championship recap. I know it was a late night Sunday night, and it was a big comeback win, so I get it. You're on the bus on the way back, and you don't violate the bus code. But so now, on Tuesday, give us the recap of the weekend and the new number 1 ranking. How about that?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, we started off this year not ranked, which kind of blew my mind. We knew we had a good team. We knew we had some good players. I think pitching was going to be an issue. or maybe the voters maybe thought that because we did lose a lot of innings from last year. But, we talked about that in the previous one of the previous UFA episodes, where we really we've got some very talented pitchers, and we really felt like we came up with a good plan for how to best use them this year, where ended up with 16 different pitchers recording a win on the year. They used a lot of openers, never really kids didn't really have to extend too much. And hey, before you know it, you're number one in the country. I mean, the boys did a great job. We lost the best player in the country game one. I'm not sure if even you're aware of that, Tim, but John Michael Phil, our catcher, who was a perfect game Division II national player last year. It was the conference of the year last year. I mean, his WAR, they don't do WAR in Division II baseball. WAR wins placement.
Oh, I'm gonna have to yank Trey there real quick. His signal going in and out on us. He was talking about the defending National Player of the Year that John Michael Fail that he had on the other day, and I'm guessing he got injured. We'll try to get Trey back on there, but I know he got back in on the season. At least I think he did as part of the program, and got beat out by his teammate for Conference Player of the Year honors. But we'll try to get more North Greenville baseball domination update. Oh, looks like he's back in. He's on the move now. We'll see if he's got a better signal there, Trey. Any luck this time? You got me good?
I hope so.
Yeah, bright and clear. So you're saying John Michael Fail, first game of the year. Did he get injured? Is that what happened?
No, first game of the conference tournament. He
gotcha.
got a big base hit. And then when he got to first, he felt something in his knee not feeling right. And anyways, it was a devastating blow. He got an MRI. We still don't know exactly like how long he's going to be out for, but he's certainly going to be out for the remainder of the postseason. It's just very, very sad. He's a leader on this team, was definitely going to get drafted. We don't know kind of where that stands right now, but just such a good kid. And did you hear me talking about WAR at all? Wins above replacement?
That's where we lost you.
Okay, so that's becoming like more and more of a factor, like for contract negotiations and stuff in the big leagues. Like how valuable is a player? And it's not a perfect stat, but the wins above replacement is like gaining a lot of steam when it comes to really truly, at least some of the nerds that are the GMs and stuff are using that to find out like really truly how valuable a player actually is. And
but tell me, how do they come up with that? How exactly do they know what a replacement would have done? I don't even quite get.
There's like kind of like a standard baseline for what an average big league player is.
Gotcha.
And so we could do it. In fact, and I've wanted to do it like throughout our conference is to pull a Goodwill Hunting, if you will, because that would kind of be what it would take to figure out if you want to do it accurately to figure out kind of what the baseline player actually is.
Gotcha.
But trust me, this kid's wins above replacement would be off the charts. He's a catcher and, just an unbelievable hitter. Anyways, we lost him and that was devastating, but the boys really rallied around him. We had this kid who really hadn't caught all year that came in, freshman, first at bat after John Michael Fail got injured. He had a bomb into the woods.
Fantastic.
It was awesome.
Well, so to me, that's a great example of why that stat is just mislabeled. You don't know what the replacement's going to do, right?
You're sounding like a boomer right now. You're sounding like a boomer right now.
I'm definitely an old dude.
Yeah. I mean, I heard Drew talking about striking out and like how striking out was embarrassing and stuff like that.
I knew you would like that.
I joke with all these players like on a daily basis because I hear it all the time too, especially like from my father-in-law. How I mean, he went a full season without ever striking out. My dad, the same thing. You talk to Landon Powell. Landon, the legend of Landon Powell grows on a daily basis here in North Greenville. Okay, the guy was obviously All-American superstar. And but I mean, some of these things he's coming up with lately, I mean, I don't remember all of them. Okay, no, I'm just joking. But I'll joke with the players all the time about I'll just be in the cage throwing them balls and be like, boys, when I was playing, I never struck out one time my entire career, and I'll make funny jokes like that. But these kids nowadays, I mean, like, for example, you were talking about the kid from Tennessee throwing 100 plus or whatever. A lot of the pitching is better than when we played. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The pitching is more scientific. Like the swing and miss type stuff is more scientific. They've got these machines and computers that help them design pitches to design them for swing and miss type pitches. So there's the technology's a lot. Am I going in and out, Tim?
No, you're great. Perfect.
Okay. The technology is better, and so if you get with a good coach or a good trainer, and they really know how to use the Rapsodo and the motion sensors and all that kind of stuff, you can really develop some really good swing and miss type stuff. Now, the old school people like yourself who wants to deny the wins above replacement stat or that kind of thing, they will say, well, yeah, I don't like the technology and this and that, and hey, I'm on that side too. Okay. Like, you don't want a robotic player. At the end of the day, you want competitive players, but the technology and a lot of the stuff that the new school people have brought in, if you marry them both together in the proper way, you can really, really develop some very, very good players. And one thing that Landon has done such a good job of here at North Greenville, and what Drew Meyer was saying is so true. The practice, Landon, first off, you have to have good players. You got to be able to recruit good players. Landon has been able to recruit some very, very good players throughout his time at North Greenville. Without good players, it's going to be hard to win. But then once you get the good players, you got to develop. And that is what, we're really good at here. We're good at, getting the good players to come and then develop them when they get here. And we practice hard. You practice hard. That's, if we learned one thing from Coach Tanner, it was how to practice the right way. But it starts with getting the right players who want to practice. Like Drew Meyer, what a practice player. I mean, he was out there every single day practicing so hard. And when you have a leader like that who's laying it all on the line every single day, that's going to go to the other people throughout the team. And, that's what we try to do here. And it works. Good players, good practice, and that's how you win.
Hey, man, I want to get another opinion in on that, another former Gamecocks opinion in on that. And you're talking about me being an old guy and the whole thing. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that book number 3 came out for Langston Moore and Preston Thorne. And you were talking about practice players and the whole thing. Langston, I'm guessing as a former Lou Holtz player at South Carolina, who was kind of infamous for ridiculously difficult practices, you might have a bit of a different take on the importance of practice, or maybe football is just different than baseball in that way.
Well, first of all, I grew up in Charleston and I saw Drew Meyer firsthand. He ain't never practiced. That's just God-given. He was just great. He used to come to James Island and beat our forehead in single-handedly because Bishop England, I mean, besides just being kind of the rich kids and the snotty kids in school in Charleston,
love it.
Drew would come through there and tear our little country behinds up. But man, practice is vital and it's fun. It's something that I think everybody has to learn. Like Trey was talking about with Coach Tanner. And that's one of the first things I learned coming to South Carolina with Lou Holtz is like, I thought I knew what it took to be a football player. I thought I knew what it took to win a football game. And the difference between my little high school perception and Lou Holtz, who's a Hall of Famer, his reality of being a winner and doing all these different things, that was made apparent relatively quick. So, and one of the biggest things that, when we talk to kids or we work with kids, or even when I talk with my own daughter, is that, if you're lacking confidence or anything, it's because you're not finding it in the practice before the game. You always hear the old adage, treat practice like a game like a practice, and everything will be fine. But for a lot of times, that's when you get a coach in there saying, man, don't make something up new on game day. Don't try to give me a screwball pitch if we ain't worked that pitch the whole week, or don't be trying to do this pass rush move, Langston, if you ain't never worked it the whole week. So I think that's one of the valuable things is that kids have to understand that the semblance between putting as much effort and focus into practice, and maybe not the physical or like the game day effort, but the focus, the attention to detail, all the little things, those matter because that carries over into the game, and that's when that muscle memory stuff kind of kicks in.
Yeah, and that does translate, right, Trey, between football and baseball or any other sport, individualized tennis, golf, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, hello, Langston. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you doing, sir?
We are doing good. We are doing good. Yeah, I mean, it's just so important. If I was a football coach, though, I think most of my players would probably be injured before game one. So that might not be the best thing for me because, gosh, football, man, it's so dangerous. I mean, you could get injured on any play, and the last thing you want to do is get your star player, or any player really hurt before the lights are actually on. I mean, those games in football are precious. There's
Right.
so few of them compared to baseball. So that would be a whole different mindset. I don't know how I'd handle football type practice.
Yeah, and I always say like football, like practice, like trying to control. It's like a crash test course or something. You're trying to like you want to have the violence and you want to try to be prepared for it, but like you're trying to figure out a way to control that. And I mean, we've seen this how they've gotten away from in the NFL or just in certain things where like taking the pads away, and you see a lot of tackling injuries and try to reinforce because there's really only one way you can replicate, hitting live is to go live. It's the same way. And you can do certain things in baseball. You can do certain things in basketball and other sports to kind of simulate some game situations. But football is tackling, breaking tackles. And so how do you simulate that if you don't have the pads on all these different things? So that's always been interesting and to see kind of like how you blend the old school, because there has to be some of that. It would be no different than if you got a child, and I bring this up because I got a 16-year-old roommate, aka my daughter. And she's ready. She's legally, she can drive. I've seen her drive, but I don't know if she's got the reps enough to go out there on her own. So again, it all goes back to, we got to get her some coaching, but we might have to get her some other coaches besides me, because I might be trying to do some certain different things that are not going to help her. So, getting those real reps is really important, but especially in football, man, it's wild. It's wild to try to do that.
Hey, Trey, how does that locker room, how do those 18 to 22-year-olds compare to when you were 18 to 22, you were in the Carolina locker room?
A lot more Snapchatting. Snapchat is huge. My Snapchat game is so bad, and I've wanted to get in on it, but I can't. I was watching Bryce Roddy, one of our freshmen. He made about 45 different responses on his phone. I was kind of over his shoulder. He sent about 25 different Snapchats, responded to about 3 texts, liked about 3 posts on Twitter, retweeted a couple, and then followed someone on Instagram, seriously, in like 15 seconds. It was the efficiency on the phone was unbelievable. So you got that. And like Drew was talking about, about the pressure or whatever some of these kids probably face, because you can see people like writing about you or whatnot. I don't know. I thrived on that kind of stuff. I loved hecklers, or I loved people doubting on me or doubting on the team. And it's just, and some kids are like that. Some kids kind of go into a shell or whatever. It's just important to make sure you get the right kind of kid. And then when you get them there as leaders of them, you can, help them through the process of like how to deal with a heckler. We have kids, and I remember we were at North Georgia earlier this year, and there was like a handful of hecklers that North Georgia brought to the game. And they were yelling at our guys and stuff like that. And a couple of our guys were like, well, let's go beat them up. Or, and I'm like, no, guys, listen, these kids are good for the game. Like, this is good for the game. Like, they're out there cheering for their team. Like, don't want to beat them up. No, just show them how you're going to beat them up on the field, and let them kind of maybe show them a different perspective. I feel like I'm pretty good at doing that. And just anyways.
So what I'm hearing is like mental toughness, especially in baseball, massively important. Yep. Do you feel like that level of mental toughness is there as much as your team had it? And then Langston, I guess maybe mental and physical toughness when it comes to a football approach, what you see from kids these days as well. Is it the same, or do we overblow it as old dudes now and say, no, we used to be much tougher back in the day?
I'll jump in on the physically. These kids are huge. Like, I mean, used to see just look across, like when you start seeing like tight ends that are 6'6" and they're, I mean, this is wild. Even on the opposite end, when you see maybe like a shorter defensive lineman now, they're 6 foot, 290, but can run a 4.6 and do all type of like soccer type of deals, which you're not.
But is the toughness there?
But the toughness, I think the toughness is there because it is there. And this is the thing, I think, where it's just segmented to like athletes versus the rest of the population. Because if you're an athlete, you always comparing and kind of looking at other guys. And pretty much for the most part, when I go out there, I see kids, whatever coach tells them, they'll still do it. Run through a brick wall, do this, jump up, down, spin on your back, do whatever Oklahoma drill. They'll still do that to the most part. I think the biggest thing I see with kids now is that in the locker room is like a lot of just comparison so much to, like Trey was saying, like, I heard so-and-so saying certain things. And just now, back in the day, kids would be like, yeah, let's go. Drew Meyer, they might see a write-up in the James Island, whatever. And Drew will go over there and be like, yeah, I'm the reason I hit 5 bombs on y'all is because y'all was talking trash about me. Versus now kids on the outside, they might have a little bit of the exterior of like bravado, but like when you dig down into it, like Trey was saying, there is still kind of like a little bit of that. They're kind of wavering a little bit. And that's where I think the coaches and some of the older us, that's where us old guys who have been, get off our lawn type of guys can come in there and tell guys, no, embrace this type of stuff. And I'm right there with Trey. Like the best feeling in the world is to go to somebody else's place and to beat that tail and to look at somebody's mama and they just, you know what I'm saying? And again, physically beating somebody up, that's really cool. You want to jump in the stands and beat up the fans or whatever it is. But, having somebody's little sister cry, man, I'm just saying, maybe that's just the sicko inside of me. And I always think about this story. When I was in the NFL playing with the Cincinnati Bengals. We had one of the first games we ever played. I was starting dressed out. One of my old heads, Dwayne Clemens, a defensive end from Cal Berkeley. Dwayne was a wild dude. He was definitely from the old school. And there was a heckler out there with his wife. It was Central Time, so we started the game at 11 o'clock. So this dude was liquored up. His wife was like, she obviously had to drag him to the game. Why he got so liquored up to watch the Tennessee Titans with the Cincinnati Bengals, I have no idea. But this dude was just nonstop. The Bengals, And Dwayne just after a while just turned around to the dude, did a full split. This dude was like 6'6", 260, 270. Did a full split. It's like, can your husband do this? After this, I'm going to go out here and sack the quarterback too. And the whole game, the guy just kind of like sat there like. So again, there's a lot of ways. I mean, I learned some cool little heckling deals too. So, I mean, not as if I ever needed, more ammunition, but seeing those type of things. And that's what we always try to tell the kids, man, you're the guy in the arena. You're the guy in the field. You directly control the outcome of the game. So don't let some flea on the outside kind of dictate how you're feeling or how you're playing. Because again, it goes back to this mental toughness stuff.
Yeah, Trey, your great line in baseball is pitchers got to dip in. You got a better one than that these days. Have you evolved here recently now that you're an official coach in college baseball?
Yeah, my chirping game is at an all-time high. One thing I'm really proud of this year is, whenever you get 2 strikes or whenever one of your hitters gets 2 strikes on them, you have to let the umpire know that the umpire must play with integrity. And that the way to do that, and when I'm talking about that is the called strike 3. The called strike 3 is awful for your offense. And when they're calling pitches, when kids are throwing 93 and the umpire's giving them that much off the plate, it's like impossible to hit. So I'll say, hey, this umpire will be fair with 2 strikes. And then that'll, hopefully get our kids, where he won't call. And like a lot of times a pitcher will be, they'll throw the pitch off the plate. The umpire will call it a ball. And I'll make sure that the other team knows that at North Greenville, we play with integrity. We're not trying to get calls off the plate. We're playing with integrity. And obviously the other team is not. And lots of different chirps. Like we're trying to make Abner Doubleday proud today. I don't know. You'd have to come to one of the great things about baseball is the dugout in the locker room. It is just so much fun when you're a part of a team just to hear the different things. And really, when you get done playing, that's what you miss the most. You don't miss, of course you miss the competition, but you really miss the relationships and all the fun things that happen within the dugout. Anyways, Langston, great to see we got practice. Tim, I'll stay in touch with you and we'll try to do something else soon. Langston, go get them. I hope you're doing great. Hey, go Gamecocks, go Crusaders. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely, man.
Trey Dyson, ladies and gentlemen, as only Trey can do. Good stuff. Langston, you guys cross over at Carolina? You guys were there at the same time, were you?
Yeah, I want to say I might have been out of there just a little bit before he might have got in there.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah, I've been hitting the head, man. All swirls in together. Some say it's
Exactly.
COVID brain. I just say that's Lou Holtz brain.
But it has led you to multiple things after your playing career. You got the athletes and artists, got your own podcast up and rolling as well, and then that's book number 3, right? Tell us about Eusta.
Yeah, Eusta was a rooster, and you're talking about old coaches and these things. So basically, the premise of the story is Cocky has lost his crow, and if he doesn't crow and can't do what he used to do, what use is he? And so until he meets kind of an old, cantankerous kind of old guy who is amalgamation of all the coaches we probably had over the years, from the outfits to some of the things he says in the books, the old head kind of tells him, man, you still got some value. And a lot of that, it comes back to what we were talking about, the, getting kids to understand that, physically you might not be able to do some certain things that you used to do, but there's still a lot of mental things that you can, and wisdom that you can impart on folks, and you still have a purpose. So it's been really cool for us to continue to be creative and to stretch ourselves in a bunch of different ways. We rhymed in this book for the first time. It took us about, it took 2 college guys and 2 books in about 5 or 6, 7 years to rhyme a whole book, a children's book. But it's a lot harder than you think, man. But it's been really cool to do that, and then to continue to kind of push ourselves and to create our company and do all these podcasts. It's been really fun.
How'd you get into it, man? How did it even start? I don't think I've ever asked you that. You and Preston, I mean, I don't know if I know of any children's authors that played in the NFL. Do you know of any others? Are there any others?
It's funny. I just read an article about a guy, Tim Green, who used to play for the Atlanta Falcons. He has ALS right now, but I think Tim was a lawyer. He was, he wrote some books with, he did some more like middle school stuff. But for us, it was just kind of taking some cues from our coach. Lou Holtz was always a big advocate for literacy. He would always talk to us about different books and different things like that. My mom was an educator. Preston, of course, was an educator, is an educator. I married an educator. So it's been all these things have been kind of in and around our sphere of life. But we wanted to kind of do some stuff like our coach was. So at the ripe old age of I think this was 2010. So we were, probably about 26-ish, 27-ish. Preston and I was like, yeah, man, let's write this life-changing Lou Holtz leadership book. And, we got all the answers because we went through his program and we wrote it out, and it was terrible. It sucked. And so just like most things, I always tell kids the first time you do anything is sorry. It's terrible. Like the first time I ever put football pads on, I didn't know where the butt pad went. There's a clue. It says butt pad, put it near your butt. But it's the same thing with writing this book. So we'll never put that book out, but that's the great thing. There's probably some practice tape of Langston running around on James Island somewhere that'll be hidden forever, but thank goodness nobody worries about that. They just worry about the end result with the NFL stuff. So we came up with a whole bunch of different things. And there was a story that Coach Holtz used to always tell us, and this kind of led us into our first book called Just a Chicken. It was about a turkey. It was about an eagle that fell into a turkey coop, and it grew up with all the turkeys, and it never realized it was its greatness. And one day they were all kind of pecking around on the barnyard, and the eagle looks up and he sees another eagle flying, and he asks the turkey next to him, he's like, "Yo, what's that?" And he's like, "Man, oh, that's an eagle, man. But we're just turkeys. We'll never be that. We'll never be able to fly." So I mean, we always, that's really synonymous with a lot of folks and a lot of things what people think they can do, whether it's environment or whatnot. But that was always just a really salient story that we always thought about, and always thought we can adapt and apply to our own deal, especially being a Gamecock and trying to compare ourselves to other people. And that's one of the main things with, being who you are is just fine. But a lot of times we like to compare ourselves. And in doing that, you kind of kill what you could be because, oh man, that Tim Hill's already taken. So I need to figure out some different things. Not that I say I can't take some of those aspects of that and blend it into my life, but it's about having the courage to really go out there and be yourself. So that's been really the deal for that. And it's just kind of like with sports and football, we started trying out a new move, as my old coach Rod Marililli used to say. And it kind of led us down this path from 1 book to 2 books to some podcasts to a whole bunch of other things. So it's been really cool to try to figure all this stuff out and create this really cool life. And it's a lot cooler than putting pads on and running around outside all day too.
I hear that, man. I just was randomly at a first grade literacy picnic the other day with my first grader, and then who pops on the stage? Had no idea Langston and Preston would be there, and just a great message to share with first graders. And I'm wondering, I was just substitute teaching the last couple of months or so. Yeah, how about that?
Wow.
And so I got to see firsthand how kids are interacting in schools as opposed to, just kind of theorizing what today's generation is or the whole thing. I was encouraged.
Yeah.
I was massively encouraged by what I saw in classrooms from kids in 2022, as opposed to maybe the perception that I had from the outside looking in. What about you?
100%. Yeah,
As
that's
people
that's
around
one of the that's one of the things that Preston, and when we first started doing school visits 2015, so this would be about our 7th year going out there and doing this full time. But that was one of my first kind of apprehensions, like, man, these kids, I mean, I hear all these stories and not realizing, yeah, I mean, Langston, you've been in school too. I'm thinking it's like Lord of the Flies. They're gonna have trash cans on fire in the middle of the hallways, just random, it's all type of wild stuff going on. But that's really not the case. And that's the one thing I've learned, and I would encourage a lot of folks, that these public schools, volunteer, go up there and see for yourself, because there is a tremendous amount of work. It's really encouraging to see the kids and how much they want to be taught, how much they want to soak up information. But we always just hear stories about, oh man, a kid brought a vape to school, and oh da, 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 and oh Lord, this kid is doing it. And again, I just put it back into the context of what was going on in elementary, middle school. In my school, we just didn't have social media just to kind of exploit a lot of these different things and tell these stories. So not to say that things are worse or bad. I would just encourage folks to go out there and see for themselves, because the teachers, I mean, the teachers, the students, I mean, it's really encouraging to go in there and to see all the creative ways that all these kids are learning, all these different modalities. But of course, it gives me hope for the future, because otherwise I'd have been like, oh man, just like you said, that old man, like, oh man, give up hope there. If you didn't come out the 1990s, man, we're all lost now. But every generation kind of says that stuff, right?
Right, but this specific last 2-year period, even more challenging with the COVID issues, and to see having schools having to adapt, kids having to adapt, the whole thing. Again, I take away the encouraging part, and the importance of supporting teachers when you're a parent.
100%.
Supporting, your school or your local community, man. It takes all of us. I'm a firm believer of it takes the village kind of mentality, and teachers are a massive, important piece of that. And I think have been taxed unlike ever before in history, because of what's happened in the last couple of years with how schools have had to adjust and need our support that much more.
100%. And that's the one thing, COVID did, going through this whole experience, is that it exacerbated a lot of the issues that were kind of like fissuring in the winds. You think about NIL, but specifically with teachers and how much we as a society rely on them to babysit, to raise our kids. And even if you're a parent that's really involved with your child at home, for the most part, we send them off for 8 to 10 hours a day and expect somebody else who we maybe just meet for a first time and let our kids be around for the next 9 to 12 months. If anything, we need to support those folks and make sure that we give them, not to say we give them more money, but just give them more support, appreciation. Of course, teachers need to be paid a lot more than what they're paid now. But one of the biggest things is, like you're saying, is supporting your community, because the more you do this, the more you're investing into your future self. And the reason why Press and I, one of the other things we always say is that, man, one day we're going to be old, and like, if none of these kids can read and cook, I mean, who's going to make my stuff at Chick-fil-A? Like, because what I'm saying, who's going to take care of me? And that's one of the things I learned being around, just seeing my mother after years of like teaching students, and maybe 10 to 12 years later, these kids are adults, and that kid is the one helping you at the hospital when you go there. Or Preston always tells a story, man, I love it because I go down into the Vista, and one of my old students owns the valet parking business, so I get to park like I'm a rapper or something like that. And so this is the beautiful thing, but also we know the flip side of it. If we don't really pour into these kids, they're going to end up being like jerks. And like I said, we all know uneducated, unread communities usually end up being like, not to make a disparaging thing, but like some third world terrorist country. And the more we can pour into these kids, earn more money, they become better students, they become better stewards of the communities, they become better citizens, the more and we all benefit from that. So again, I would encourage everybody to at least figure out some way to go and volunteer or serve your school, because again, you're serving yourself and your own interests as well.
Langston Moore, former NFL player, former Gamecock football player as well. Clearly not all just about football, but let's get into a little football. You mentioned NIL in there, and briefly, that is the issue right now in college sports across the board. Where are you with that? Knowing that you guys, I think you guys have a deal specifically with DeCarrion Joyner with promoting your book and literacy and the whole thing. Obviously, it seems like you're like me and you're on the pro side philosophically of name, image, and likeness and players being able to cash in. Now, how do you kind of marry that with what you're seeing out there and reports of like an $8 million deal out there for a prospect to go to a certain school?
I'm all for it. I mean, even if there are those crazy stories on one end, I am definitely an entrepreneur, a capitalist, and again, when it works great. And that's one of the beautiful things why we wanted to support one of our own, DeCarrion Joyner, not just saying he's one of our own, but he's from the low country that we are. And we knew his teachers and knew a lot of things. So NIL gave us an opportunity to figure out creative ways to support kids in this context. But there's probably going to be fewer $8 million, $1 million deals for certain kids than there are going to be more DeCarrion Joyners out in the world who are going to get these smaller type of deals. And that's one of the things we always wanted to highlight when we talk to kids is that, sexy versus successful. It reminds me of like the NFL when I see these numbers thrown around here. But if you're the first pick of the 6th round and you're trying to make the team, you're just going to be happy making the league minimum versus, Carson Palmer, who's got a fully guaranteed whatever it was back in 2003. So for NIL, I mean, we're all for it. I'm all for it for sure, because I think there is so much money being ran through these universities. And the reason why a lot of these universities, of course, can swell up these budgets and these coffers so much is because on the backs of, free labor. So, nothing speeds up success than having, free labor. That's why we want these robots and all these AI things, because we can just charge them up and don't have to worry about HR complaints or all these other things later on. But, as it continues to go, and this is, as we dwell into this new space of NIL and trying to figure out what we can do and what we can't do. It also, I think, like we talked about speeding up, like the NCAA we know for years was, an institution that made a whole bunch of money off this whole deal of college football players and different things. I mean, having coffers of like 50, 60, 70, $80 million in cash just sitting somewhere and they haven't produced any product except, handing down rules and different things. It's going to be an adjustment. And anytime you think about how we went from going from no seatbelts in cars, the mandating having seatbelts in cars. And at first, a lot of people didn't want to do that, but we're all better for that. And the stats show that. Now, I'm not trying to equate safety with kids making money, but I also know that, playing sports and doing these things for a lot of these kids, this college window is going to be your only opportunity. And for that, to have a kid wait 4 years to actually make some type of money, it's just really ludicrous, because anybody else on the college campus can come up with an app, or somebody can resell sneakers. There's a group of kids out of South Carolina that, started up Cola Kicks, and no kid in college on scholarship ever can do some of those things. And I think about all the opportunities for students that may have been lost, but I'm here for the NIL. Even though I hear these crazy stories, it goes back to, if you can afford it and your university can afford it and float it, go ahead and do it. But I also know with this free agency and this kind of gun for a hire type of deal, I think a little bit of like the loyalty will be lost, because that's one of the main things I realized when I got into the NFL. Is like, yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals drafted me, but the Denver Broncos called me 2 weeks later and was like, yo, we want to pull you out the practice squad. So there's really no loyalty to anything. It's really more about opportunity, getting the most you can, because we always tell these kids you only get a short window physically to do these certain things. And so I think it's going to be the same way when we're talking about these NIL deals. If you're a kid that can get it, you just got to understand. Now, I turned down that deal to go to Denver for whatever reason, because I got paid more to stay in Cincinnati and I had a rapport with those guys. Was that the right decision? Was it the wrong one? I don't know. Denver went to the playoffs that year. Cincinnati never goes to the playoffs till now. We're like 20 years later. But the whole point with the money and these boosters getting involved, they've always been involved, whether it's been directly or kind of covertly, all these different little channels. But I think it's just one of those deals where they'll figure out kind of the parameters for these things. But I'm all for these kids making money, and definitely for the labor going out there and getting their little piece too.
So as fans, how should we maybe change our mindset, if at all? How can you help educate those of us who didn't play college football to exactly what the players are exposed to on a day in and day out basis, and maybe help us understand their willingness to jump ship, jump schools, jump better opportunities? Is it just as simple as equating what they're doing to our jobs? I mean, jobs are jobs, right? You get a better opportunity, you're going to take another job. To me, in my mind, it's very similar to that.
Yeah, and you're right, because I always say the workload for a kid that goes on any scholarship kid, D1, D, whatever. I mean, the workload is on par with somebody working an 80-hour week, probably even more, depending upon in season, out of season. The 80 hours might be the off season, one of those deals. We also equate it to like somebody trying to go to like law school or medical school, but with the physical component that you have to perform to stay in school. Because again, if you're not, doing certain things, you're not going to be able to maintain that. And most of the time, coaches will say, yeah, you can stay around here, but you might want to think about transferring a little bit because we're not getting what we want out of you. In other places, we call that just being fired. So I think for the fans, again, it's going to have to be kind of a relearning period for a lot of fans because there is that purist type deal where like, oh man, I just love seeing Ryan Brewer play for the love of the game. But I'm just telling you, if Ryan Brewer had the opportunity to make NIL money, I mean, how much more could he have made after that first Outback Bowl game and subsequently after the, but regardless of that, he would have had to have waited till he graduated school. And again, maybe 3 years from after the Outback Bowl, nobody wants to hear that Ryan Brewer story, or he loses kind of his momentum or some of the cachet that he had, some of the popularity, and maybe he loses some of those dollars. So timing is always one big thing. But I think for fans, they're going to have to kind of relearn and also have to come to the truth of like, man, my school doesn't have the booster pool that some of these other schools have. And when I look at like Texas and how they're playing one game in the NIL, and then I look over at another school and they're playing a completely different game. But then I look, oh, lo and behold, Eastern Illinois is offering some kid $1 million to come be their quarterback. So it's always interesting to see what people can and can't do, but also what is and what isn't available when we're talking about money and resources. Because when it comes to certain things, we don't have the money to do that. But when it comes to NIL or maybe getting the kid to transfer in from a big time school to come to Eastern Illinois, we find that $1 million relatively quickly. So my point is, I think for a lot of fans, they're just going to have to kind of relearn, readjust. But this will ultimately, I think, move to kind of like we've been seeing with the conferences, bigger conferences, fewer smaller conferences, having their own type of deal. Is that fair? I mean, probably not, but we know as this industry grows, as TV money grows, all these different things, it's going to be haves and the have-nots. We've seen this in society across the board with schools and other things as well. So I think it's just going to be a readjusting period for folks, but it just amazes me that how many boosters and how many, not even boosters, just collectives like the Gator Collective. And, I didn't think there was a guy in Gainesville, Florida that had 25 million just to give away to the Florida Gators. But it always amazes me to hear kind of that cachet of alumni and what they come up with.
As you were talking there, it dawned on me when we had Drew Meyer on a little bit earlier, he was talking about the massive difference between playing in college, where everybody's the same, and playing for the, quote, the love of the game, and then going to the minor leagues. And when money is involved in the locker room and the whole thing, you've seen it from the football perspective, no minor leagues involved. So maybe a little bit different there. But, the people who want to sound the alarm right now, I don't quite understand the logic that the rich are going to get richer here, literally, and college football is going to become more top heavy because it's been so top heavy in the college football playoff era. I don't get that. And a guy like Spencer Rattler is going to be the starting quarterback for South Carolina this year. I think it's a great example of how maybe that could go the opposite way. What do you feel like is the experience now that players do have money, or certainly can have these opportunities, just from the locker room standpoint? Is the biggest bank account, checkbook, is the school with that going to necessarily be the best program year in and year out? Or my standpoint is, Langston, you can buy headaches just as easy as you can buy really, really good players and wins.
That's a great point. I think about the Washington Redskins when in the late 90s, early 2000s, they went for broke on this. They went and got Daryl. They went and got all these players. I think about the Dallas Cowboys relentlessly spending a whole bunch of money and not getting certain things. And I think that's a big lesson that, again, these kids are going to have to learn, that it's not always, it used to be a tale. Grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? And that's before we were talking about paying these kids money. And just because there is an opportunity for you to go over here and make maybe six figures when you were only making maybe 75, 80,000 here with your NIL deal at your school that you're currently at, all that money isn't good money. And I go back to my own personal deal with like the option between getting pulled off the practice squad, going to Denver, or staying and having the familiarity. And lo and behold, I start and play the next year because I hung around. I don't know if that would have been the deal if I went out to Denver. And that was one of the interesting deals that I wanted to think of, what I wanted to kind of watch and see with Spencer, because we obviously knew he wanted to come to South Carolina because he wanted to, give himself another good season, try to figure out some different things. They got a new coach out there in Oklahoma, and some of the things didn't go his way. How would he adapt? Would he just come out here and just kind of be really bullish and put his head down and not really make relationships? But that's really something you can't really do if you're trying to be a quarterback and win. You have to have relations. It can't just all be transactional. And I think that's one of the points I'm trying to make is that, we've seen people try to buy championships, but until there is that common element of care that I give a damn about what you're doing, maybe not fully after we leave the stadium, but I got to care a little bit for this whole machine to go. And we've seen this in all facets of life, not just sports, but, you can go and I've seen guys say, man, I want to go be a principal, or I want to go make the six figures doing that. And they do it and they hate it because they don't like the people. I know coaches plenty of times. I've had buddies myself personally who told me like, man, I finally made that 6-figure coaching deal and I got the car and they paid for my apartment and we were winning, but I hated the room. I hated the guys in the room. And I really didn't love the profession anymore. And so I think this is a lesson that the kids are going to have to learn a lot sooner than later. You used to be in college to be able to bump around, but now when you're coming into college with NIL, you have to see yourself as a brand, as a pro, and handle yourself as such, even though it doesn't have the moniker of pro on it. Because again, you can make things really transactional, but as you see, one kid will jump from one school to another school, or just transfer, or just try to chase the money now, as you might see, and that might be good for a little while, but eventually, it's going to burn yourself out. And that really comes to mind when I think about. I'm trying to think exactly what the year it was. Dan Snyder tried to buy that team with Dion and all these players, but ultimately it doesn't work, because when it comes down to playoff time or crunch time, if you don't really care and you already got your money, you're like, let's go ahead and go to Cabo, man. Let's get up out of here, man. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, baseball, I think, is the best example, right? There's no salary cap in baseball, and yet the Yankees and the Red Sox and the biggest franchises, or the biggest price tags out there, they don't always win. It just
right.
The payroll, the larger the payroll does not equal the most wins necessarily each and every year. We've seen it in Major League Baseball. I get it. You get more advantages. We're not naive to that, right? You're going to have better opportunities, and clearly you got to have good players to win a bunch of football games. So let's transition that to the Gamecock football discussion right now, and where you feel like Shane Beamer sits after year number 1 and another spring practice and going 7-6 last year.
To come in your first year and to win 7 games, but also give yourself a chance to go to the bowl game and all the things that look. Lou Holtz went 0-11 our first year. We went 0-11. Let me not put that all on Lou Holtz there, because he'll probably watch this and call me, Larry, God damn it, Langston, I didn't do that. It was you. You dropped the ball. It's really encouraging. And we talked about earlier with the kids and just social media and different things, how much would the kids have tried to transfer out if Shane didn't have the wins the first year, even just, going 5-6 or whatever it is. It's amazing, just because kids are always looking around. And that's the one thing about social media, what it does. It gives you the opportunity to look and kind of peek and see and compare. And in doing that, you kind of, you can make a decision to say, this is not working out for me, or you're going to stick it out. And that's one of the things when I think about with like Coach Beamer, he's done a really good job of changing the culture. And when we say changing the culture, leading with love, doing all of those different things. But what does that mean? Really getting the kids to care. And that's such a big difference from, some of the things you heard about the Will Muschamp locker room, where it was really transactional. It might have seemed like an NFL locker room, but maybe a lot of these college kids weren't ready for that, especially coming into a program like that. I'm encouraged because we're a couple plays away from beating Kentucky. So we could have had the opportunity to maybe win 8 games this year. But again, maybe sometimes those things are good that we lost those close games. We lost that Missouri game. We lost some of those things, because that shows us how much far we can go and how much better we can get. Not because because of talent, just because we don't beat ourselves. And the way Shane is imploring the message, and I kind of rewatched a little bit of the spring game last night, Pete Limbo and all of the staff he's put together, really, really encouraged and really excited. But I also love the stance that he's taken with the transfer portal and being really proactive in that. And when I say that, I mean, he's not trying to go after every guy, but he's trying to go after, of course, the select guys. He had Stogner, of course, who he had a relationship with out here in Oklahoma. Spencer Rattler, of course, another kid he had a relationship with. But there was there's opportunities for other kids to come to Carolina, and you see that through the transfer portal. But Shane's been really diligent and using and making sure that he picks the right guys, but also using the transfer portal as a benefit for us, as opposed to saying, oh man, we don't know about that type of stuff. We want to try to get it pure this way. This is the new wave. This is what's going to happen. And just even with the NCAA talking about doing away with the 25 limit of scholarships, which makes sense because I mean, you should probably just take it to like the NFL model and just say whatever your 85 players are each year, or whatever the limit is for scholarships. That's just what it is, and then no different than saying there's 53 guys on a roster. However you want to put those 53 on there, that's on you. So I think Shane has done a really good job of embracing that. Of course, we're all mad and love because it does really seem like Shane wants to be here and that care component again, and that kind of seeps into all of the players because. Like I said, you can have all the talented guys in the world, but if y'all don't like really being around each other, and especially y'all going to be in a room for 8-9 hours and doing all this crazy stuff, it's going to show itself on the field, on all type of stuff. And you just see guys kind of breaking their necks for each other. And I just hope this continues to grow and blossom because that's going to be the thing we hang our hat on at South Carolina, creating that culture of that versus trying to be like a Stanford or Texas and do some NIL stuff. That's not going to be our pathway. Our pathway is going to be creating a unique culture, unique identity, and kind of just doing our thing. And then from there, we figure out how good we can be compared to the rest of the world because we know we got good players and good talent out here in South Carolina.
I went on a long tangent yesterday kind of about that same thing, about how Shane Beamer has created an identity, and he's done it in the last 18 months, done it unlike I've really ever seen, maybe since Brad Scott first came in. And it's easy to look at it after the failure at the end now, but at the time he was a really hot assistant coach, and it was going to be an exciting brand of offense and the whole thing. And Lou Holtz had already done it somewhere else. Steve Spurrier had already done it somewhere else. Will Muschamp had already failed somewhere else. Do you think it's because of those last three guys that we especially can appreciate what Shane Beamer is doing now from an identity standpoint, or was he going to be that guy no matter what, where he came into as a first time head coach?
I think this job was really something he wanted and was really obviously something he really shot his shot to go after. And that's something I have to respect because Lou Holtz, like you said, he's had success. Whatever happened here at Carolina, it was all gravy for him. Same way with Steve Spurrier. Now, again, we got the best out of those two guys. But again, we can't just keep relying on like, the AARP of coaches to come through there and hold us, because eventually we have to have something with some tenure and some link to it. And I think, getting Shane at this right opportunity, but also for him to understand the culture and the climate of South Carolina, but him not wanting to, try to be like his dad and just trying to figure out what works for him. And that's the one thing I really appreciate about him. Like, everybody's always asking him, oh, what about Beamer ball? And he's like, yeah, we're going to have that in here. But like, some games it's not going to be that. Some games I want to be Steve Spurrier or whatever the offensive mind is of the day and put up a bunch of points. Sometimes we're going to have to win it on special teams. Sometimes it's going to have to be a combination of all of these things. So that's the one thing I think that was really encouraging about getting a guy like Shane, because, getting him here, him wanting to be here, because that was always the big thing too with Coach Muschamp. Like, I thought the second iteration of Will Muschamp coming to South Carolina was going to be really good for us, and it was, but it also felt like Will was like, what's that over there? Oh, I can get out of here. Okay, yeah. And when that opportunity might show itself, it'll leave. But obviously he got fired and, got his money or whatever. But I think Shane is a guy who wants to be here for the long term, wants to see his kids be here. But also, with that being said, he's going to pour everything he can to make this opportunity a really great opportunity for himself, but also to create up this program, because we've always talked about South Carolina being in a unique spot geographically, being in the SEC, having resources, having the stadium. I mean, what more do you want in a coach to try to find some place? I mean, again, there's only going to be so many Michigans, Oklahomas, Floridas, and Miamis, or whatever, or the old Miami, right? So, there's going to have to be somebody who really wants to try to live in Columbia and wants to be there and make that their home. And it feels like Shane is really committed to doing that. And he's showing that in just kind of the culture and how he's trying to really cement his roots there. And that's really satisfying for players, because that was one of the big things that got Steve in trouble. Even though we all knew the writing on the wall, but when he said, oh, I might not be here for a couple more years, and everybody, what do you mean, coach? You were just in my living room recruiting me, telling me da-da-da-da-da. And kids think about those things where Steve might have not been. Same thing with Coach Holtz. He always had to kind of say, oh, yeah, I'm nose running all the time when he's in your home talking, oh, yeah, I'm going to be here. And you're like, Coach, you look like you about to go into a hospice center or something like this. I don't know how much longer you're going to hold on here coaching. But I think that there's a lot to be said about that. The staff is young, but it's a good mix of older and younger. And again, I'm really excited to see how much they continue to grow and come together, because this is the exciting thing when you've looked around at other programs across the country. When they find their guy and they find their cachet coaches and they're able to retain and keep those coaches there, that's really important because you can grow that family and everybody knows, oh, down in South Carolina, it's Jimmy Lindsay as the D-line coach. And he's been with Shane, Pete Limbo, all those things. That says a lot, especially in the world today when a lot of coaches are being poached and pulled from other schools. You think about Bates leaving Clemson and going to Oklahoma. I mean, obviously there were ties there with Venables, but the more you can kind of keep your staff intact, it just kind of bodes more for that family atmosphere. And I think that's what a lot of these kids want to see these days and be around.
Got a question in on the YouTube live stream there from RL saying, what did you think of the lines play last year? It looks like it might be both on the offensive and defensive side. Why don't we start on the defensive side, since that's where you majored back in the day?
For sure. That's definitely the strongest part of our team. We have a bunch of, that's where all of our, 4 or 5-star guys are. We've, got Birch. We got tons of guys, JJ Enigbari, who just got drafted to the Green Bay Packers. Congratulations to him on that. And I always tell guys, you might not went where you wanted to go in the draft, but at least you're going to a team that's going to win, and y'all got a quarterback. So I don't know what's going to happen after this year, JJ, but living in Green Bay, you're not going to spend no money, and you got a quarterback. Y'all going to win some games, so it'll be all right for you. But we definitely have a lot of talent, and I said it kind of at the beginning of last year. It's kind of the point where that talent, all those stars got to start showing themselves out on the field. Now, again, last year, JJ didn't have the exact stats that we like to see, but we saw a lot of production out of a lot of other guys. And that's the really encouraging part, because it's one thing to have one good dominant player like a Hutchinson or some, one of those kids that get drafted. But once that leaves, all your production leaves, all your leadership leaves. And I think that's one of the good things about this room, is that there has been a bunch of guys that have been in the fold for a long time, Ricky Sanders, all these different guys. And it's an opportunity for them to kind of finally step up, because like I was saying last year, for a lot of these guys, y'all been in the rooms for y'all almost 27 years old, man. Y'all need to go out there and dominate and play as such. There's no reason to feel your way around. You've been in and around this deal for a long, long time. So really encouraged with that, and really encouraged with some of the guys they're starting to recruit. Of course, we got some big time prospects not too far away from Columbia right now. So again, adding more of those guys into the room and keeping all the stars and all the talent in the room is going to be very, very important. Conversely, on the flip side with the offensive line, it's been one of those deals where we've had a lot of guys who've been there together for a while, the consistency, but we still haven't seen it kind of show itself on the field. Now, we've seen it at times with the running game, and obviously 2 years before when Coach Muschamp was still here, Kevin Harris, was that, him leading the SEC, was that more of the function of the running game at that time, the offensive line? I don't know. But the biggest thing I think we need to get this year, specifically with our offensive line, is the consistency, because we do have older guys. We do have guys that came back. They could have transferred out or graduated or whatever. So there is a lot of guys that are still on the team. And there's no reason for us to, even though they might not be talented-wise, the best in the conference, they should have seen everything that they've ever going to see. Every blitz, they've been in every situation. They've been to Tennessee. They've been to Vanderbilt. They've been to Clemson. So, again, being the leaders and stepping up into that role is something I'm really excited to see if they take that next progression, because again, there's only so much football you can have in front of you. And especially if you're kind of a 4th-year guy, 5th-year guy, and you have some of your buddies that you've been with along, that's what makes it really fun, because y'all all kind of seeing the field at the same time. And so I know there was some changeover with the offensive coordinator and some of those things, but at the end of the day, their offensive linemen and, double up and scoop up to the next level, man, and just run people over. Y'all be all right.
Right. That last part there, how especially fans can look at it very simplistic and be like, hey, just run the football, right? Block the guy that's in front of you. When you see still shots of three linemen blocking one guy and 2 guys running free over here, is that when it's chess instead of checkers, Langston? And there's just whatever the defense did was clearly confusing the offense, and whatever the offense was trying to do was either too confusing or it just got screwed up somewhere.
Yeah, one of the simplest ways somebody ever taught me to play offensive line was by the great Dr. Jerry Brown down there in Berkeley. Produced all these great running backs, Rusty Williams, Trevin, all these dudes, and continue to be. I think I heard a story the other day. Jerry Brown is still coaching like the Shrine Bowl game or something, and his whole scheme was a zone scheme. If somebody's in the gap to your right or to your left, if we're running to the right, you take them. If nobody's there, you check and go to the backside, and that's it. It's simple. And so I think that's one of the things we have to always remember when we're talking about football. Trying to be too smart, being too cute, kind of bites you in the butt a lot of times, more than trying to get over, you fooled me with my read and all of these different things. As my old coach Kosh used to say, man, it's real simple, man. You, as a defensive lineman, you either going straight, right, or left. If you're going backwards, you're wrong. Same way with offensive lineman. If there's a guy in front of you, you take him. If there's a guy in your gap, y'all double up and take him. And so again, a lot of times we can make these things more difficult than they need to be. But sometimes with the verbiage and the changeover with coaches and new offensive line coaches, even if guys have been in systems for a while, it gets to be kind of confusing. But that's where I would, pull some of those older guys together. And I think hopefully this is what we'll see the next progression with these guys being in the system for this year, is that they just keep it really simple and allow themselves to play hard and play fast. Because that's the other thing. If Eric Douglas can't use all his physical strength because he's too busy thinking about those different things as opposed to just going out there and trying to eat the guy in front of him, that takes away from all the weight room, all the workouts, all of those different things, all the nuance. So again, just keep it really simple and let these kids go play.
That leads me to the last question. Fair expectation for Gamecock football for 2022. Any idea? What you got? Big smile.
I mean, again, it's really, and I never really realized this, but to go from, 7 wins to maybe say 8 to 9 wins doesn't seem like a big jump, but it's a huge jump. But to go from 7 wins to double digits is huge. And I never thought about this because, until I look back at my career hindsight, you're like, oh man, I only won like double digit games like one time in my life. The rest of it was all like, 8 and 7, 9 and 7, those type of deals. So I think about for these guys this year, they got a lot of talent coming back, keeping everybody healthy, really encouraged with, of course, Spencer Rattler, because just watching him practice with everybody has raised everybody else's level up. It's like, not saying Spencer Rattler is Michael Jordan, but if you got a quarterback there, you're going to run that route precisely this time because, again, Spencer's going to get me the ball this time. We don't have to worry about this. He knows these reads. So I expect these guys, of injuries, the injury bug, and everybody stays healthy, for us to maybe possibly get an opportunity to win, again, 7 to 8 games regular season and with an opportunity to get a nice little bowl game. That would be right on par for what I think Shane is trying to do. But it's also, like I said, last year, we had an opportunity where, we could have won 7 to 8 games in the regular season with beating Kentucky. And again, that was a solid Kentucky team. I mean, I saw they already got a projection for their quarterback to be one of the first picks in the draft next year, one of the first quarterbacks drafted next year. So that wasn't a slouch team. We just didn't take advantage of all the turnovers, and they took advantage of the 1 or 2 turnovers we had late. And so I think these are all the lessons and just the process of this team learning how to win together and learning how to win with Shane in this deal. So really excited. But again, I have to also add the Lou Holtz. This is where my Lou Holtz come back in. We start the first game with Georgia State, and we know there's going to be no better test than Sean Elliott coming in. He gets all offseason to game plan and to think and to, run these miles and think about different game plans and different things all summer long while he's out there showing, oh, I love South Carolina. Don't fall for that for 1 second. So we're going to have plenty of challenges as we do every year, but starting the year off with Georgia State and, of course, him coming back, it's going to be really exciting. And again, nothing like playing in the SEC, nothing like being the Gamecock and having that schedule, because you're always going to be battle tested, and you come through it unscathed, you'll be all right. You have a whole bunch of wins at the end.
Well, you would know. You've done it before, did it with those Outback teams back in the day, then on to the NFL, then onto the sidelines as the radio sideline reporter for a bunch of years. Got stuck with me doing a post-game show one year. Fortunately,
Tim, that was therapy, man. We had to talk to folks off the ledge, man, and we had to do it sober.
Ooh, that was a must-chance first year too. I think one of our first games was UMass. UMass win, right? Oh, I guess it was right in the middle of the season. But boy, having to put a positive spin on barely pulling one out against UMass with a new quarterback who didn't change things much back in the day, that was something for sure. Man, Langston, just like Anthony said, Langston's A1 here. Absolutely. You appreciate everything you are about. And if everybody wants to go out and get the new book, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, best way to go is to our website, athletesandartists.net. That's athletesandartists.net. I'll put a nice little picture up there. That's our website right there on the back, Athletes and Artists. Other than that, we got everything under the hashtag because we can't remember anything our damn self. So that's why we hashtag everything. Houston was a rooster, hashtag just a chicken, hashtag just a chicken little, the fight podcast. All of that stuff's on social media somewhere. If not, we're always incessant and obscene on our social media with putting this stuff out relentlessly. So hopefully if you forget about it, you'll see us on social media and like us, retweet us. And we appreciate everybody in our support.
At Remove the Change, where you can follow Langston on Twitter as well. Man, really appreciate the time. Love to have you back and hope to do it again.
Absolutely, man. We'll get Preston on here soon with you.
Nice. Langston Moore, ladies and gentlemen. Great stuff as always from so many different perspectives, and what Langston's all about is what I hope this show becomes all about, right? Not just talking X's and O's and the whole thing, but underneath that, standing for helping make the world a better place. Very simple, right? And being about the right things and helping the next generation along. And Langston is definitely all about that. And I hope you enjoy the conversation and his perspective, because it's not just, I mean, if you want a great example of not just a football player being about X's and O's and being a human being and someone who then gives back to his community and his alma mater, the whole thing, that's Langston Moore right there. And love to hear what he had to say today, and hope to bring him back and gets plenty more perspectives as we move on, as we're wrapping up show number 7. I think this is on Tuesday of week number 2. Really happy that you've been along here, whether you've been doing it live with us, which has been fun for sure. And let me not blow you out with the music as we get ready to conclude this sucker. But however you're doing it, if you're checking us out on the podcast version of this thing, where we're all over the place now, I just saw we got on, what was it? Stitcher was the latest podcast option. There we go. We can even go crazy electronic to leave you this morning. Okay. The point of this show, to help make your life just a little bit better and to maybe learn a little bit in the process. So thanks for being a part of Tim Hill, Unrestricted Free Agent, show number 7. My special thanks to former Gamecocks Drew Meyer and Langston Moore, Trey Dyson as well. Tomorrow, looking forward to, again, hoping to have a football-baseball dichotomy, Stuart Lake and a couple former Gamecocks in Wes Clark and Brady Allen from the baseball field, and trying to get to Patrick DeMarco, who's working with current Gamecock football players, basically as a life coach and trying to school them up on things other than football, which he knows plenty about, having played in the NFL for as many years as he did as well. So that's what's on deck for Wednesday's show. Thanks for being a part of Tuesday's show here. Tim Hill, Unrestricted Free Agent.